Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of A Great Conversation here on Nerds and Suits. Today my guest is Winston Marshall, the swaggy blurred manager of the Swag faction in the movie Trivia Schmodown, a talented actor, a creator, somebody who does all kinds of cool stuff. I've been wanting to talk to Winston for a long time. So he came on today. We talked about Schmodown. We talked about nerdy stuff. We talked about real life stuff. Politics. We talk about race stuff. There's all kinds of stuff in this interview. I'm very appreciative to have had Winston on here as such a positive voice, somebody with such a unique perspective on this industry and a good friend. So I hope you guys enjoy this interview. Please do me a favor. And of course, hit that thumbs up button. If you haven't already hit subscribe, maybe this is your first time on Nerds and Suits. We do very, very positive content every week. Some of my music, a lot of interviews. And if you guys have never checked it out, please come back. We do these every single week. And I think you will enjoy this episode today. A big shout to Nicole Krafik as an Infinity patron in the Nerd Network, making this episode happen. Go to patreon.com/nerdsandsuits for all kinds of great stuff, including one-on-one sessions with me. I'm going to be talking to you guys about your careers, your life, whatever you want. Just kind of a fun way to give back for the holidays. For all the patrons that are interested in doing that, check it out. All right, guys, thanks for listening and enjoy this episode of A Great Conversation with Winston Marshall. You look good, man. You look good. I like this. So you got the sunglasses, you got the purple shirt. It's kind of like violet. And then you've got the pink and purple pocket square. As Drew and I used to always say, you look good, Dutch, the old Predator quote. You look good, man. I like it. You've got sunglasses on. It's rare I'm in the presence of somebody who's wearing sunglasses and I'm not, that doesn't happen that often.
You know what? I heard Nerds and Suits and I see how you roll. I saw you at the end of Spectacular busting back out. So I just thought that this is what the uniform was to be on the show. I just was trying to follow suit, no pun intended.
You look good, man. You look good. I like it. I relate to the sunglasses thing. I was telling Andrew Guy this last week on the show. In high school, I was such a pain in the ass. I literally thought that I was Axl Rose. I mean, I was sure of it. So when I was 15, I used to wear aviators just like these ones you got on.
Yeah.
Leather jacket, leather pants, a chain around my neck, I had hair down over my face, and I wouldn't take my sunglasses off in school, period. I signed all my papers, different aliases over the years. So it was Benjamin Lawless, T-Guns, Tommy Guns. And so my nickname amongst the teachers and students became Rockstar because I was unwilling to do anything else.
That's kind of fire, bro.
Yeah, dude. So it was a sweet time in my life. I made a lot of good impressions.
Hey, man, look, I totally get it. It's funny because the other day, I haven't really, barring a few Instacart trips and stuff like that, I haven't really been that much out of my apartment the last couple of weeks. And so I just randomly was like, yo, I need some mirrored aviators. I don't know why, but it's just something I decided that I needed. I found some cool blue mirrored ones on Amazon for inexpensive, so I don't feel bad if they break or get stolen. And that was, how people say they do retail therapy. That was retail therapy for me, even though I have nowhere to wear them. So I'm excited that I get to at least wear them for the show.
I love the sunglasses. I was considering making a pivot from the Wayfarer style to the aviator style this next season. I was thinking about it. It seems like a good move. I'm really trying to lean into the 80s villain thing. And two of my favorite 80s villains both wear the aviators. Toothpick maybe too could be good.
Dude, a toothpick would be phenomenal. Yeah, I might steal that and roll with the toothpick. Every black dude with the toothpick, you ain't fucking around. Every evil villain Idris Elba always had a toothpick, and I didn't even ask if I could say the F word. I apologize if I.
You can say whatever. Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
Man. I just that's something we're supposed to ask up top. I did not think about that, but yeah. Maybe that's what it is. I'm obviously still in the Schmodown verse. I'm still not I'm not heel. I'm not I'm still pretty much with the face. But I think the one thing that people are going to see next season that'll be pretty huge is that I'm still going to be the same happy-go-lucky me, but the amount of, I guess, underestimating, disrespect, all that, people love you one minute and then they want to bounce the next. And I know I'm still in the conversation for Manager of the Year and all that stuff, but I've seen the number of people that have already forgotten about me and are already harping on Roxy and that have so hell-bent on Shannon when, again, I did it from top to bottom.
I can feel the anger. I feel like you're pissed, and I would be too if I were you. Because I got to tell you, man, I'm on the corner. I've been really rooting for Roxy in this one. Nothing personal. I see she drafted 3 players, and all 3 players got gold at Spectacular, and I'm just both in game, and that's a really impressive way to end the season. I'm not saying that she's a better manager. I'm saying Well, she might be, but I'm not saying that.
I
But she
would
had a
count.
great performance.
I would counter with one of them held the gold at the start of it,
It's fair.
was not going to I actually thought Ace was going to pull it off. There's a lot of like other circumstances I can't really get into. I'm not at liberty to say.
Sure. Yeah.
But long story short, she did nothing for Alex Damon. Maybe an IG, and the most he did there was beat a player that has
Yeah.
been she's been getting better, but like we're
Sure.
working to see where that goes to start off. Then he gets into the tournament and he does have some good wins, but to get that whooped up on in that match, to get KO'd in that match, in a
Tough.
lot of opinions and nothing else to really show for it in IG. I don't know. Like, I mean, that still means that I think Alex could be a threat in IG. But Roxy didn't, launch him to something new,
Yeah, I
honestly.
mean, yeah, he's got that championship pedigree. We'll see what he does, man. I love what I'll tell you, Winston. One of the things I like the most about hanging with you and talking with you is when you and I first started working together over on SEN Live, and we were right when the show first was just getting going, like in the little transition period, like a year ago, more than a year ago now. Back when we used to be able to see each other in person.
Oh, Jesus.
I'd be sitting there on the show and Christian was kind of pitching you and trying to get you going with the whole thing. And he was like, this is how it works. You should do this. And I laugh looking back because you've just become such a stone cold. And I feel like you're like all of us now. You love talking about it, right? You get worked up. You want to argue your points. Like it's hard. You're invested.
There's a part of me that hates that part of myself, to be honest with you. But yes, I am invested now. I think the good thing that I do, honestly, is I have found a way to split it and let it take up a very specific corner of my mind in my life. Just because this year in particular has been insane.
Yeah.
And so you had to. I think it was good to have as something to focus on, but I think it was also important for me to have it up to a point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I wish you could teach me how to do that thing with my brain because I am not good at it.
Fair. I look. I look. Who knows? Maybe next season I will have a chance to teach you all of that, sir. And it's a possibility that's on the table. But that's the funny thing. I just remember specifically. I asked a couple of questions here or there, but the one thing I remember from that happening a year ago is everybody trying to be like, "What are you gonna do? What's your game plan?" You like, and I was just like, "Oh, okay." And like, I just was like kind of quiet, and I was like, because I would much rather people not know what the fuck I'm doing and then be completely surprised. And it's something that I'm used to doing. I'm more of an observer than anything else. That's my main MO is to watch and observe. And then once I've kind of assessed a situation, then I make my move. And that was something I did before the draft, during the draft, throughout the season. It's what I've done with my career. It's what I've done. It's why I love dodgeball so much. I know it sounds kind of silly for people that aren't familiar with what it looks like for adults and in this day and age, but like it is probably one of the most strategic games played because you think, oh, I just have to like throw really hard and be quick. And that's true, but I know big dudes that are slower than everybody else on that court and can take out an entire team by themselves just by being very methodical. And so I love playing just because of that. I miss it dearly. But yeah, man, I'm excited. I like the fact that people are pissing me off. It's gonna make
fired up. Yeah. No, it's great. I love it. Yeah, I love it. So dodgeball. So you play like on a competitive team?
Mm-hmm. I do. I'm not good enough to make Team USA. Those cats are kind of crazy. Half of them are former D1 baseball or football players.
Yeah, right. They've all got strong arms, right?
Mm-hmm. And so which is a part of it. I know some that are martial artists. I know some that are former gymnasts. Because again, it's not just the strength of your arm; it's about your flexibility, your agility, your hand-eye coordination, obviously, being able to catch as well as throw. So like, but I do play with a lot of them. A lot of them are LA based, and so the leagues that happen throughout the week, obviously they stopped in March, but the leagues that happen, I get to play with them. And again, Could I take out an entire team of them? God, no. It would have to be super fucking lucky on my part, but I can hold my own with them, which is always fun, especially the older I get. You know, when my knees are like, bro, no, thank you. Like it's cool to know that I can still mix it up, you know? So.
Yeah. That's fun, man. Yeah. I don't do any kind of recreational sport activity like that. I do love stuff like that. I mean, so dodgeball, right? It's like how many players on each side?
Depends on what you're talking about. Most games are typically somewhere around anywhere from 6. It could be as low as 6, it could be as high as 20.
Oh, wow.
It depends on which league you're talking about. If you're talking about like the world championships and stuff like that, then that's 6-on-6.
Okay.
And like there are positions, there are various strategies, stuff like that, things that people would think, nah, it's just you're on a court, you run around and throw the ball. But that's the thing, if you're selfish in that game, you literally going to screw your entire team over.
So what, the game starts, the balls are all on the center line, you guys got to run in and get them, or is that not how it works?
So in like professional play, you'll have typically an odd number of balls, typically around like anywhere from 3 to 5.
Okay.
You would decide if you want side or ball possession, and you would switch sides at halftime and stuff like that. But you decide if you want ball, because each round, let's say we start with 3 and they start with 2, then the next round they would start with 3, we would start with 2. And so the idea is you have 2 people. You could have as many as you want. You could have just one. You could have all 3, whatever. But it's dangerous because if you're at that middle line, you run the risk of getting hit pretty fast. But you typically send the 2 fastest people you have to sprint up, go get the balls, toss them back, and then it's a coordination of like if you have the 3, it's a lot of pump faking to like make them psych out and maybe tense up about where the ball's coming from, and then releasing on a certain count. It's about maybe putting 2 balls on a person at the same time. The people sides are known as corners, and their main MO is to defend the rest of the players because they pretty much never let go of their balls unless you draw up a play to do that. Literally just to psych people out / jump in the way to defend people. And then they will throw balls if they see an open shot on like an important target, like someone that's like maybe the biggest arm in the other team. If you got a wide open shot and you think you can hit them and they won't catch it, you go for it, but you don't necessarily want to release it because then you've just let go of defense. And now all of a sudden you got 1 ball and they got 4. You know what I'm saying?
And if you catch the ball, the other guy's out. It's a single hit. You get hit, you're out, or you catch the ball, they're out. That's how it works.
So if you get hit, the ball is live until it hits a dead object. So that includes the floor, the wall, the ceiling, anything like that. So if it bounces off of me and you're next to me and you happen to grab it before it hits a dead object, then that's actually a catch. I'm safe. The person that threw it is out, and we get somebody to come back in since we caught a ball. If you catch a ball, you do get a player back. So the catchers a lot of times end up being the people that have good hands tend to be some of the most valuable people by far.
I have found competitive subcultures to be some of the most endearing and important pieces of my whole life. And that includes, I would imagine you have a close relationship to your teammates. I imagine you guys all kind of love each other. You probably really enjoy the nuances of the little community, and you guys, right? You get it. No, so I mean, look, I play Magic the Gathering, as you know, and I've played it competitively since I was a little kid. So that community, a lot of my best friends, a lot of people in my life that have been most important, they've come from Magic.
Yeah,
Schmodown has taken over this huge part of my life. A lot of my close friends now. I mean, Kevin Smets, obviously, who we're praying for, one of my best friends in the world. Love the guy to death. You know, some of my best friends have come from that. I think about in high school, I played on the best ultimate frisbee team in the country.
Bro, I loved ultimate frisbee.
Yeah, we were the best. There was 2 teams. There was us. There was Amherst. They were the 2 best teams. Most of our guys, high school?
I'm assuming if you were playing against Amherst, you were talking about college?
No, so we were a high school team. This was when I was in high school. I was like 16, 17. I think it was like, I think actually in Amherst, this was where the Amherst high school.
Okay. Got it.
We'd travel, we'd go to tournaments and stuff like that. A lot of the kids on the team, like 5 or 6 of our kids were on the USA team. My older brother was on Team USA, the junior national team. That's how I got into it. I was always kind of the worst player on the team, but I was on the team. I did get the gym bag and the shorts. I got to travel with the team, which is sweet.
Hey man, that says something. 1,000%.
Yeah, right. But so that shit like that is my favorite. I mean, like I have such good memories of that, of all these little things that I've gotten into, even fantasy football. Fantasy football friends in the leagues I've been in. How are you doing? Are you still in right now?
Yeah, the playoffs just started. I'm first and second respectively. I took all this COVID crap like has screwed me a week or two where like I'm ready to roll. I'm projected for 150, and then Sunday morning it's like so and so got COVID, they out, and then I got to put in a scramble backup because at that point, when you're dealing with bye weeks on top of that, you're like, damn, I don't have that other person. Now I got to go find someone on the waiver wire and hope that's enough. But first and second, respectively, we do in one of the league I'm in first, we do a weekly MVP for whoever has the most points overall.
Top points of the week. Yeah, I like that.
It's been 14 weeks so far?
Yeah, we're in week 15 now.
We're in week 15. So of those 14 weeks, 10 times I won the top score of the week.
Wait, so how many leagues are you in? You're in 2 leagues or more?
Just 2. The most I've ever done is 6, and that was
and you're top 1 and 2 in your 2 leagues? Mm-hmm. This motherfucker with the flex. He comes in here. He's like, "Oh, you're after him on my fantasy football league? I'm not thinking about this. I'm first and second. Yeah, it's a good year. It's not a big deal. Have you seen my sunglasses?
I warned y'all about Schmodown. I was like, do you understand that fantasy football is what I do? You don't think I can't translate this shit?
So I've been in this league called Liquor League for this is year 9 right now. I think it's year 9. Yeah. Next year will be our 10th year. Andrew Guy was one of the founding members with me. It was back when we used to work at a bar together, and I came up with this idea. And the whole idea of the league was that instead of winning money, you only win fine wine and liquor. Wow. It was a booze league.
Yeah.
So you'd buy in. I think the first year we all bought in for 100, maybe 125, something like that.
Okay.
Now it's like about twice that. I think it's been around that for the last 4 or 5 years. It's a big buy-in. I mean, it's a heavy league. So. And what used to be back in the day when we started it, we had wholesale connections because we were a bar. The manager, our buyer, was in the league. The main guy, like the regional manager of the largest spirits distributor in Southern California, was in the league. So we had all these incredible deals at the end of the year where I'd go down to the cellar and just be like, I want a case of that. Give me 6 of those. And I'd lay out this table, this huge table. There's 102 items. That's the deal. And first place drafts the first 42 picks. So they get, if they want, like, let's say there's 25 bottles of scotch, which one year there was, Drew, the year he won, took every single bottle of whiskey and scotch. He took 25 bottles of scotch.
Holy shit.
Then he got like 12 bottles of red wine, several champagnes, all these like barrel aged stout beers. I mean, if you win about $1,400 of alcohol.
That's insane.
It's a ridiculous league. It's just full of alcoholics. It's
like you said about subcultures though that I love is it's the fact that people have evolved their fantasy football leagues in so many ways. That is the most original and brilliant one I've heard so far. I mean, again, ours are just pretty standard money. I know I had a buddy that they do a loser tattoo league.
Yeah,
which I'm not about that. Like I don't. I'm very meticulous about my tattoos. That like I respect people that just get them all the time, but for me personally, I need them to mean something, and I don't want a failure last place of a fantasy league if my entire team goes out for COVID for 3 weeks and I can't recover. I'm not trying to have some ugly ass like like mutated SpongeBob on my ass. Like that's a hard pass from me.
Oh well, I mean, we used to care. I used to really care about Liquor League. Like around season 5. So I used to get Nike gear for the whole league. That was part of the buy-in. You get like embroidered. So I've got a green Liquor League 3 jacket. It's a Nike jacket. It's Ducks colors. That was the year Drew won. So he got to choose. I got the founding hat says like commissioner, and it's like founding member, charter member is what it says.
Okay.
I got the Nike sweats. Those are like Eagles colors because the guy that won. So we got all those. There's like the giant, this like Declaration of Independence looking thing I did one year. It was all everybody signed it. I got that thing somewhere. Yeah, the trophy is a giant. It's like this tall.
Okay.
Huge. The thing is like easily, it's almost 3 feet tall, and it's a giant bottle, like a 3 what is it, like 3 gallon bottle of.
Okay.
I can't remember what it was we drank that year. It was like some kind of Belgian huge bottle. It was like a $200 bottle. So we took the bottle, chromed it. We completely coated it and chromed it. And the thing is mounted on a giant wooden base that's got all the winners engraved on it. The thing is enormous. So the year that I won, I moved into this apartment. I didn't have anywhere to put it. So it was just hidden in a cabinet because I didn't have anywhere I could even put it. It was too big. The guy that won has it right now. It's in his house. So if
Okay.
I'm Drew and I, Andrew Guy and I, and Smets, who's in this league now.
Oh wow.
All three of us are in the top 4. So
Nice, man.
Kaiser and Smets they were the 1 seed. They're a team.
Give me your quarterback, your running back, your wide receiver, and your tight end. I'm just curious. If you know off the top of your head.
Yeah. My squad's pretty trash. I don't actually know how I managed to get it together. I somehow did. So I got Russell Wilson and DK. That's been a big connection for me all year.
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got Michael Thomas because he was my first pick, but he didn't play all year.
Sucks. Damn. Yeah.
And it could have been even better, but he barely has played this year.
Right.
And then Jarvis Landry is my 3rd receiver. He's been fine. He's above average. Okay. Zeke, who's been just trash all year.
You got saddled with a lot of people that just didn't perform this year to their standard. Yeah.
Zeke and Mike Thomas were the guys that I spent money on. And so then, but I spent 70% of my waiver budget on Mike Davis in week 2. And he's actually been super solid for me all year. He's kept me in it.
Mike Davis for who?
He's for the Panthers. He's the guy who's backing up McCaffrey. He's played so I got him. I picked up Cam Akers recently. That was the big pickup, keeping me in it.
Nice.
And after that, my tight end is garbage. I don't even know. It's the guy on the Bengals right now. I haven't had a tight end all year.
Okay.
But I had John Brown until he got hurt. I have Gabriel Davis as my backup receiver. And he's got some good depth. So look, I actually have a shot. My team's rounded into form at the right time, where most of these guys are actually playing pretty well right now.
Right.
Schedule's pretty good. I picked up the right defenses 3 weeks early, so I was gonna have
Russell Willie. I just need him to shape up. So in the league that I'm in first, I have Russell Willie, Kamara. I've been kind of having a 3-back system after Kamara of like Ronald Jones III, which this motherfucker got COVID right now. So now I got to worry about my top number 2 back like being out. But I also have Kareem Hunt, who is hit or miss depending on Chubb. And then what is the last back I have? I have one more that's slipping my mind right now. But my receivers for that team are Kelsey at the tight end. I might just have to look, like, because I'm confusing it with the other team. I want to say Hopkins, but I'm pretty sure I have Hopkins in the other league.
Calvin Ridley or
Hopkins, and then this is the dude that's been the man, AJ Brown, bro. AJ Brown, the Titans, and then
jacked too.
Oh yeah, he's him and DK Metcalf are massive. It doesn't make sense. But I also have, even though he's been up and down, I have Mostert. That was the other back. I have Ayuk from San Francisco, Claypool, CeeDee Lamb, who's been dope.
Yeah. Okay. So you got some good players and some good pickups too. So I used to work for Red Zone Fantasy Zone for the NFL.
Okay.
I did it for 5 years actually for the DirecTV Fantasy Zone broadcast was my main gig. We used to split research for Red Zone and Fantasy Zone, but I was in stats research, and so I'd go work in the Rich Eisen studio. First, it was a different studio. You know Jason Smith over on Fox Sports. You know who that is? He's a radio guy.
Super familiar.
You might recognize him. He's a great dude. I worked with him for a couple of years, and then I went over to work with like Dan Hellie and James Coe and all these NFL Network folks. And I was doing stats research. And so eventually, when it got to the end of the run, the final year I was there, they kept moving us around. And my position in the end was stats research, but there was so many people working on the project that at the end of the show every week, we would have this little segment on the screen where they would put up headlines. And they were supposed to be like silly puns and stuff that to represent the day's biggest people, right? They'd come up with a fake, like the Helly Herald and the Co Chronicle, right? They'd put up so it was our job to come up with a stupid pun that represent like a headline and a pun that represented the day. So we spent I spent 2 years doing this. I'd spend the last 4 hours of every shift sitting there just like writer's room, like brainstorming. So anytime you say like a player's name, it's always like Jeremy Langford, good old Daddy Langlegs, or George Kittle. I remember the Kittler on the Roof was one of our favorites. That was a good one. Raheem Mostert was it like spicy? What was it? It was like Dijon spicy Mostert. Raheem goes hot dog on whatever. It was like we would write these dumb headlines. It was always so fun though. That's like the thing about the job that I miss the most.
That sounds dope as hell, which I'm curious, what is your team name this year? Because that always says a lot about an owner depending on what name they come up with.
You're talking about in Liquor League?
Uh-huh.
I've just been the commissioner for years because I
Oh,
always liked to. I used to rule with an iron fist. So
fair, fair.
no, no
My
humor.
I realize I might have to change it because I'm not pronouncing his name right, but the team that's in first is called Young Ho in this house.
No.
Uh, but I guess even though it's spelled that way, that's not how Ho is pronounced. I guess it's like Wei, so it'd be
Okay.
Young Wei Ku. So I might have to come up with something else, but like I feel like it's brought me good luck so far. I just got to ride it out. So you know what I'm saying? Even though it's pronounced Young Wei, we know what it looks like. So
Yeah,
just
no, it's good. I like what you're doing with that. That's good. Fantasy football. It's so fun. It's so fun. I mean, whatever we can do to keep ourselves, occupied during this time, I feel like it's whatever we're doing, right? Are you watching movies? I mean, I know you said
yeah.
that for the IG guys, you would, you'd kind of help out. You were part of the gang, so you'd watch those movies. But you just like watch movies in general, or you just have a lot of
Yeah.
love for it?
I love movies. Have been a huge cinephile for a while. I am currently in the middle of my Christmas watching. I'm behind by a couple of days, so I'm gonna have to do a couple of days of double or triple features just because this last week just got a little chaotic. But I'm gonna get back on that. But like I actually just before this interview, I watched the new Mulan.
Oh,
I actually liked it. It's an okay movie, if I'm being honest. Like just watching it from top to bottom, I'm like it's okay. It's not bad. It's not good. It's fine. But I enjoyed it. Like you know how sometimes you can watch an okay or a bad movie and still really enjoy the film.
yeah, of
I,
course.
yeah, that's kind of where I was at with this. In that, like, I liked the idea and the messaging of like the fact that they're trying to just pigeonhole women and put them in a corner. And Mulan and even the evil sorceress that she's kind of up against for most of the movie are like, nah, like you miss me with that. Like I'm a badass and I'm just gonna do what's right, and like you're just gonna have to deal. Like the fact that the evil spoil well, I don't know if people care, but spoiler alert, like the evil sorceress sees another woman being a badass and was like, I'm actually gonna help you
Hmm.
because like I don't like that men have been treating me like a dog my entire life. So if
Hmm.
you're gonna show them what a woman can do, I'll back you up. I thought that was like a nice little twist to that on the film.
Cool turn. Yeah.
Yeah. So I watched that, but like I have a lot to get through. I actually never watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood last year.
Ah, I
So
love that movie so much.
that I plan on probably when this interview is over. I don't have an early morning tomorrow, so I'll probably actually watch that tonight and then go back to my Christmas movies tomorrow. Just because
I
I'm a little burnt
Yeah.
out on Christmas right now.
I totally get it. I'm not a big Christmas movie guy in general. I've seen some of the greatest hits, but I don't usually do the holiday movies thing. I will tell you with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I have two comments on the movie.
Mm.
First one is I know you've talked to me before about you like to see more like black cinema represented
Mm.
and that's important to you.
Mm.
This is going to be the movie where you're like, there's a whole lot of famous white people. That is this movie, and it does feel that way. It's great, but it is totally that.
Mhm.
Um, Watch that movie as a comedy.
Okay.
Accept the fact that you're watching a comedy, and it will be
Okay.
way more fun because I've
Okay.
seen it now like 4 times, and I
Mm.
love it. But I really didn't love it the first time. I thought it was just like kind of just like masturbatory and too long, and I didn't really get it, and I didn't love the ending. At the second time, it's like arguably my favorite Tarantino movie now because
Wow.
I mean, Pulp Fiction's better, but I just laugh so much when I watch it now. I love the main characters, so I think you'll enjoy it if you're going with that attitude.
I'm a huge Tarantino fan. I have my beef with him for how much he loves to just gratuitously use the N word and make the excuse, "Hey man,
Yes,
I'm
dude.
making a movie
I
here. I'm making a
I couldn't
movie."
agree with you more, man. I hate the Hateful Eight with so much passion. I had to turn that movie off. I found it to be so boring, and also like 20 minutes in, just like why are you? I understand the point you're making. You think it's the times, but this is like just like you've done it so many times and in so many movies. Like why? I'm sick of it. I don't want to hear Kurt Russell say that.
I think and to that point, and that's something to think about is that like I don't know if you were following the whole Leonard Roberts story that came out yesterday in Variety. Uh,
No.
if you're not familiar with him, he plays like probably the main antagonist in Drumline, or rival might be a bigger thing. He was also his the story was specifically about his first series regular role on Heroes. He
Yeah.
played the husband of Ali Larter in Heroes,
Okay.
and he gave his account of how he was marginalized by Tim
Oh, I
Crane and
saw
everything
this.
else,
Laura was
and
abusive
Ali
to him,
Larter. It
right?
was bad. It was really like, including, he tells an account of like he was supposed to be in the pilot, then they pushed him to episode 2, then they pushed him to episode 6. So he didn't even debut until the 6th episode in, even though he was expecting to start right away. And then Ali is supposed to be his wife in the show, and I remember the show fondly. I was a big fan of both of their characters, but apparently the behind the scenes of it, there was a scene where they were trying to do that TV nudity thing where they didn't ask her to get naked. They were like, "Can you just take the straps off and like to the side so you still have your top
Yeah.
on?" And then we just pull up like the comforter so that it looks like the two of you were just intimate. And she refused to do it and threw a whole fit about it. But then an episode later, when she was supposed to be having an affair with one of the white co-stars, she had no problem, full lingerie, like doing stuff that was way more risque than was asked her in that episode. And he was just talking about how she went out of her way to just be kind of like rude to him and dismissive of him. And it ultimately got him kicked off the show. It was so tense that they decided to kill his character off for the second season. And so he was just talking about how that in Hollywood, how that's a lot of what happened. Someone even said to him, like, come on, man, you're really telling me that you think that you got fired because you're the black guy? Like, let's be real. You know that they're going to keep the hot blonde over you anyway. And like that in a shitty way is what people of color have to deal with, specifically black folk have to deal with in this industry, where it will be a situation like that, where you can just get dismissed like that. And there were no black people on that writing staff. It was an all white writing staff. So like, even the description of his character was a white man's nightmare. They were like, DL 31, a white man's nightmare. He just got out of he was in prison for life. And discovers he has superpowers, so he escapes. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's how they described him in the script. So like, it was just problematic all over the place. And so it's just funny that you mentioned that. I love Tarantino, but there's something about the fact that he has to drop the N-bomb every 2 seconds. It'd be one thing if it was coming out of like Samuel L. Jackson's mouth, since he likes to work with Samuel L. a lot, or somebody else. But for it to constantly come out of his mouth or another white character that seems to be him by proxy.
It's interesting when you look at you've heard the story before that he was on the set of Crimson Tide with Denzel. Do you know the story? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Denzel years later, I guess, wrote him a letter of apology for doing it publicly, for calling him out in front of everyone. Right. But it's interesting because, when you're making art, let's say you're writing a song, let's say you're writing a script, whatever it is, you pay a painting, whatever you want to do, you kind of that whole question of diversity, what is appropriate, what's art, what's a statement, it all comes into question. And especially now in the culture we live in, you have to ask yourself that question if you're writing a script, whatever it is. And I think it's so interesting because on the one hand, Tarantino's excuse is just like it's used as a device, right? It's used to push a button. It's used because it's exploitive. It's used because it's from a time, whatever he wants to say. And everything he's saying, as far as he sees it, is true. And he is an artist, and I believe in his art. And I don't really believe Quentin Tarantino is a racist. If you ask me yes or no, I don't think he is. I don't think he is. But I also know that his choice to continue to do that is a choice he continues to make for the same reason. Andrew Guy, my co-host on Action Industries, when we talked about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, we had this big conversation about that movie because I just after I saw it the second time, I was like, dude, I just love it so much. And he was basically like, look, man, as much as I love it, because I agree, I think it's phenomenal. One of those two characters, right? Like one of those two characters or both of those two characters didn't need to be white. They just didn't have to be. You could, like, I know the premise is that he's a stuntman, and so I get it. Like, you have to kind of match. But what if you have, what if you have Oscar Isaac and Super Tan, DiCaprio? Even in that sense, it's almost funnier. Like, it's almost like they poke even more fun at it, Yeah. And I think, and there's just this whole conversation about sort of what you choose to do as an artist, what you choose to put out there, and how it's written. Because the flip side of that coin is the way you just described the casting of Leonard Robinson, right? White man's nightmare. Well, the reason that description plays and writes that way is because it's you immediately read it and it brings to mind something that's effective. It's not to say that it's right? Sure. But you read it and you're like, what is a white man's nightmare? As opposed to a very, very accurate, specific description of what this actual character looks like in his experiences. You can get it across in one line that makes you think a certain way, which is subjective. So that's a problem as well. But I think it's so interesting. Stereotypes and cliches can be used to prove a point and communicate
Sure.
something more effectively a lot of the time than a very, very carefully worded PC version of it would be.
I don't disagree, but there's a little bit of pushback that I give to that. So I get what you're saying about something that succinct as a white man's nightmare.
Yeah.
That to me comes very differently from a black person saying that than an
100%.
all white writing staff, because then there are nuances. First of all, just having been did you watch Heroes back in the day was at all?
Yeah, season 1 was great. Season 2 was terrible.
Exactly. Well, and that, you know what the problem was is that the writer's strike happened in the middle of season 2. I remember that. And so that just tanked everything. And after that, they never really recovered. But essentially, that's the whole thing, is that if you have a black writer on that,
Yeah.
there are little nuances that you would take care of that, like, for example, at one point, they're like, well, when they decided to kill him off, they're like, hey, man, well, we just kind of wrote you into a corner. We don't really know what to do. And it's like, well, that's because you kind of did this with reckless abandon. You didn't really think this out. Because to be honest, him being a criminal didn't necessarily do anything to enhance the story. He didn't need to be what his story was. And I would also make, like, if we're going in the state of like what to do with stereotypes, if the idea was to put that on its head, I get that. But that's not necessarily what you did. You just needed a device for something for him to have some sort of thing, and it became a two-dimensional kind of telling of him. And so I think that's the thing. I do not have a problem with people writing outside of their existence. I think that is what art is. But here's the thing. You first need to find a way for it to actually associate with your existence, because otherwise you're writing shit that doesn't make sense and it's hollow. But the second thing is, that's where you do your research. So whether you go get a black writer to kind of help you muscle out those nuances, or you go sit down with somebody and kind of figure that out, or you find yourself just studying God knows how much black film and TV that you go, okay, now I have a better sense of that. But that's not what happened. And so that to me is the thing. I think in the same way, men can very well write women, but you shouldn't be trying to write it from your own just imagination and or perception of women. It should be because you have had a woman help guide you into what a woman thinks like, or you've done your research, or you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what it is. I think when you think of diversity, it needs to not be the idea that everything should be anything but white. I think that in and of itself is problematic. And I think that that's something that people get maybe too scared is going to happen. That's why a lot of white people push back on diversity, because they assume that means replace all white people. It's not what that is. The idea. Also, Go ahead.
Interrupt you. What I was going to say is, so Drew and I recently started writing a script. We started writing a pilot, and we just finished like our 9th draft of the pilot. So we have a shareable pilot now that we started sending out to a few people for feedback. We're really proud of it. We're really excited about it. And the premise of the show is it's basically 2 characters that are, I would say, inspired by us, but absolutely not us, right? Like, but they're 2 characters that kind of have experiences in Los Angeles that we can relate to, ones that we have had.
Right.
And it's interesting because we can write most details of those characters' experiences because we've kind of experienced something like it.
Right.
So, Drew's character, effectively, the guy that is inspired by Drew, is sort of the lead guy. He's an actor in Hollywood trying to make it. And initially, when we were writing the show, we were writing the story of this, kind of younger him, right? It's basically a character that is my age now, but married with a kid. And then a character of him 4 years ago, as if he was, we knew each other, but different ages.
Sure.
And not us, obviously, because I'm not married, don't have a kid. But
what? I can't even fucking do this anymore. I can't even do this.
And so when we were initially developing it, we were talking about this and that and audition scenes. And then we had this conversation where it was like, well, what if we actually made the experience of being an ethnically ambiguous character a little bit more of the part of the story as the lead? If you're an actor trying to do that, what if the story was a little bit more about the experience of somebody who isn't white trying to be a leading man in Hollywood? What's that actually like? And it all of a sudden was like, well, that's a great thing to write about because somebody in this equation actually has experience with that. So all of a sudden the scenes brought on this whole new rich level of like, oh, that's really cool. That's funny. That's interesting. That's way better than just like this stock thing. And it would always be like, well, what if the guy's job was this? And it's like, yeah, because if that guy's job is that, neither of us are lawyers. We don't know how to write a lawyer. But what if the guy's job is this? Well, one of us has done that, so we actually know how to write it. And that's the whole reason when they tell you in writing, write what you know. The reason is because it's truthful, and otherwise it's just a bunch of cliches.
Exactly. And that's the problem. If you don't have experience in it, then the problem is you're just going to write based off of the wild things you've heard or the tidbits that you've heard, not from anywhere of any truth. So that's why it's important to have a room that reflects the characters you're trying to portray. That's why it's why honestly This Is Us has been so successful. You have a number of key black writers on there that have done such a superb job on little things with Sterling K. Brown and his family. And that, like, for example, in the first season, there's a point where Sterling is downstairs doing one of the little girl's hair, and then the mom comes in and like hands a brush, and they do like a high five type thing and keep going. That's a very real thing that a black mom and dad would do, where they're tag teaming the girl's hair, because doing black girl hair is so tricky. It is an art form that takes that's if you saw Hair Love, then you see that it is very meticulous. There's a lot of like love and care and technique that goes into it. It's so small, but that's exactly how a black family is. That's what would happen at the breakfast table. Is mom is finishing making breakfast while dad's doing the hair, and then whatever. So it like you said, by taking it now to what is an ethically ambiguous, trying to be a leading man, not only again does that add depth, but like you said, that's something obviously Andrew has gone through. I'm assuming this is more about Andrew than you in that regard, just as far as that goes.
I used to. I mean, yeah, I was gonna make a joke. Probably poor taste. So I'll just stay away from that one.
But you know what I'm saying? It adds a whole nother level of nuance. And I would even argue, I'm curious what the story ultimately is for your show. I bet that even that, whatever the character based off of him being a family man and all that stuff, maybe how that even affects seeing his friend trying to do that. Is that something that he personally wanted? Does that then put its own little riff if he starts seeing some sort of success and you know what I'm saying? Or vice versa. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that there are so many little things that we forget that in real life we see such a rainbow of random things across the board. Black people from the suburbs, Asian people from the country, white people from, an urban center. Like, there's so many different things that we see, that it only makes more sense to make it more rich if you're talking about a place like a Manchester by the Sea, where it is just going to be hella just white people, and that makes sense. You're telling that story. Nobody has a problem with that. But like, I personally hated La La Land, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that, like, you telling me Ryan Gosling saved jazz, like, for real. That's
People make that joke, but he didn't save jazz. He just opens a jazz club. He's a young dude who like really wants to play jazz and thinks that he matters in the world. And ultimately he opens a jazz club. He doesn't save jazz.
I know. I'm oversimplifying this, but like, it became hard for me to get over, because my other mentality at this point, again, I don't have a problem with any sort of
movie was beautiful. No, I'm kidding.
Right. You mean Moonlight? Is that what you meant to say? Moonlight was beautiful. I have nothing wrong with our standard, like, white guy meets white girl, they fall in love, whatever. But we've seen it so many times. If you're not giving me in an original way that is a little bit more true to them, miss me with that. Like, I didn't need to see another iteration of Little Women. It was a well done movie. I respect it. I honestly was real talk. I honestly was bored, because this was the eighth time, one of the two, that Little Women was made again. What was stopping us from doing that with just completely, flip it on its ear? What if it's 4 Latino women and their mom and totally. Them telling that story? Then that's something genuinely new, not just I played with the narrative structure a little bit, but something genuinely new. You know what I mean? It's part of the reason why I love Booksmart, for example. Booksmart, my favorite movie that year. It was incredible. And it was literally take the formula of a Superbad, which is ironic because Birdie's brother is Jonah Hill, and then apply it to these young girls, one that happens to be queer, and they're both really smart, and just see what the fuck happens. And it was a beautiful, hilarious fucking film that was brand new, and we got to hear a new voice. So that to me is what I'm looking for. I get mad about reboots. Some of them are fine. But like, why can't we keep exploring new things? Or if you're gonna reboot it, actually reboot it into something completely new. Like, go ahead.
Let me jump for a second and ask you. I'm going to take you back for a minute here, because So back in when was the George Floyd murder, and when was was it April? Is that what it was?
April sounds about right. It might have been May, but most of those protests started to really hit about June-ish.
Yeah, that
But
sounds right. Yeah.
so it was
So
maybe
probably in
April,
May.
probably May.
Probably May. So when that happened, like so many people, I was going on air and you were having to make the decision of sort of how much do you make your broadcast today about this topic. And truthfully, actually, even after the protests were at their peak, it just became the same thing with the election. But at the time, that was, you have to make that decision every time you go on air. Like, how much do I want to make the show about this discussion? Because A, it's a very, very long discussion. It can take the whole show. It would take multiple shows if I wanted to. B, I'm a straight white middle class man, so like I'm probably not the most 100%. I wouldn't even say educated. I just don't think my opinion's the most relevant on the topic.
Fair.
So
I understand what you're going with. Yeah,
leading the conversation's not really mine to do. So what I noticed in our community, you were the guy asked to go on all the shows, and for obvious reasons, you're a very articulate, well-spoken black man. But I was going to ask you about this. I've always wanted to ask you about it because I noticed it and it had to have felt like, I'm going to paraphrase this and you can tell me if this is offensive. Did it feel a little bit like, why am I the only black person y'all know?
It's funny.
Forgive me if that's
No. I'm not offended by that because the answer to that question was, had you asked me that a few years back, then yes, that's exactly where my head would have been at. At that point, I was more hell-bent on people are listening. Fine. You're going to get as much of this out of me as I can feasibly give up right now. Which was hard because the truth was I was hurting. I think the thing that stuck out to me the most, and I said it over and over again while it happened, I wish the only thing that I had to worry about as far as dying right now was a pandemic. I had to worry about the fact that, like, even in the midst of supposedly the world being shut down for a worldwide virus, that I could still get capped by the cops. You know what I'm saying? Like that became a thing. And then that when we were crying out about it, we were being told that we were unruly. And that, like, when we saw black folks, finally snapping. And like the funny thing is they was proven a multitude of times with the media love to twist stuff around, that like a lot of that looting and rioting actually wasn't us. There was plenty black people that were, but like I'm not going to pretend like that's not a thing. But there were multiple cases of like a peaceful protest turns a corner and there's a stack of bricks fucking there. Someone really put that there because they were trying to agitate. There was that video of that guy that had the hammer that was smashing the AutoZone windows, and people were like, "Dude, what the fuck are you doing?" And they chased him down, and he was trying to fight him up. Like, so my point was, like, even the fact that when we're doing that, if it came to destruction, people think that it's just because one dude got murdered. No, that we for 400 to 500 years we have watched our people get kidnapped, enslaved, maimed, murdered, like told we're crazy, told that we were not good enough, that we're 3/5 of a human, all this stuff where it's like, if I, and even the smallest amount, since I had the energy within me to answer these questions, I was going to do it. And I also made it very clear to everybody, there may be a moment where I don't have it in me. So if I don't, and I say, leave me alone, to respect that and leave me alone. And the same is true for any of the black friends that are going through this. Ask them those questions. We wanted you to listen to us in the first place. But if we tell you back off, just because, like, if I tell you, like, in the same way that if you're in a relationship and you're like, oh, babe, you in the mood? And she's like, I'm tired. You're like, oh, you sure? Yes, I'm tired. Okay, you let it go. And then you do it another time. You know what I'm saying? Just respect those boundaries. So there was a part of me that thought about that. And that is my own desire to see this sphere expand more and more. But catch 25-year-old me, and that is probably what I'm hollering. I'm like, why am I the first black person you want to talk to? Instead, I saw that this was an opportunity. If we can finally get this message across, I'll go to every single one if I got time to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was just an interesting moment. I always kind of wanted to ask you because I remember, obviously my co-host on Action, Drew's not a white person, so there was a little bit of this. We would be talking about it, and we'd be like, it would be, I think, a lot more interesting to bring on somebody's point of view who we know, who's well spoken, who's in the space, who is a black person. And I think we both were like, I'd be kind of embarrassed to ask Winston at this point. It would just feel like we would. It was like, I mean, we obviously brought you on shortly thereafter because, but it was just at that moment because it was all like that week, and it just was a lot. It was a lot. I was like, I can't imagine being in that position, getting hit up all the time where, it's like, because the other thing too, and again, you can tell me if I'm off base with this, but there has to be that feeling where you're like, I'm one person and I may be a black person, but I'm not the only opinion or point of view on this. Like I'm going to be the 12 shows and my opinion's going to be one that everyone hears.
Right.
Different white people have different opinions, right? They think differently about things. It's the
You're
same
not a
with
monolith.
black people.
as was said in the Black Republican sketch on Key and Peele, we are not a monolith. So you're going to hear a number of varying opinions. It's why in most of those cases, I was also like, you can hear what I have to say and I'm sharing my experience, but you also need to do your research, do your Googles, ask other Black people that again, respect their boundaries. But one of the things that allies can do, not just towards Black people, but towards the LGBTQ community, towards women, towards whichever group, is that do your own independent research and come in with specific questions because you're going to show that person you have gone the extra mile and you're trying to fill in gaps, that you're trying to make sure you have the proper information. If I have to teach you math from square one, I'm gonna have a problem. You don't go ask Stephen Hawking, rest in peace. You don't go ask Stephen Hawking, how does addition work? You come to Stephen Hawking being like, bro, hey, I know you've studied astrophysics and I had a question about this, and this theory. And then he's willing to talk to you. For a lot of people in any of those things, if you want to be an ally, you need to have a base knowledge. And if you don't, at the very least, what you can say is, hey, I really don't know a lot about this particular subject. I don't want to burden you with having to have you teach me everything unless you're willing to do that. Can you give me a starting place? And then we can come back and have a further discussion. Even that by itself would show somebody that if you're genuinely interested in their well-being or whatever their cause is and whatnot, let them know how serious you are. Because some of it feels very, what's the phrase? Symbolic, I guess. To me, I hated that black square shit. Because the point of it was supposed to be not only do you log off, but then you turned around and would amplify Black voices or buy from Black businesses or things like that.
People just shut off, where I didn't just
threw the black square up and then nothing. That should have been a moment where people put up the black square and then they go, hey, this is Blurs in the Hood. They're doing a town hall. Check this out. Hey, this is, like Spike Lee is doing like a town hall special. Check this out. Hey, Obama is doing some that is what that should have been. And even today, as we film this, I had on Arise Wanzer. She is a black trans woman supermodel, and we had her come on because as the Gina Carano stuff was talked about, as the Elliot Page transition was talked about, and we're seeing this horrible pandemic of Black trans women getting murdered. We wanted to talk on these subjects, and we started to, and then we stopped mid-episode and was like, you know what? This is not our experience or our story. We're allies in this. We don't want to give you bad information. And we went and did our research, and we found Arise and had her come on today to help us explain the Gina Carano stuff, help us explain why dead naming is bad, all that kind of stuff. But then the big takeaway that she gave us is like, I just need y'all to realize that we're just people like y'all. Like 9 times out of 10, we want nothing to do with you. We just want to go to Trader Joe's, buy our pretzel crisps, and go the fuck home. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
And that was, I think, the big takeaway that a lot of people were like, oh shit, okay, word. Like, I get it now, And the dead naming thing, it's because you're essentially acknowledging that you don't believe that their existence is a thing. That's why it's a problem, because you're just not acknowledging what they're telling you is their being. It would literally be like if I said, hey man, don't call me Black, call me African American, and you're like, whatever, you're Black, so it doesn't matter. And I'm like, okay, I just told you what is respectful for me, and you decided
right.
So that's
And what's hard about it too is like, there's the whole idea of if you think you're like a respectful, not racist, intellectual, let's just use the word woke, even though it's like a total cliche at this point.
Right.
If you're a woke person, you sort of feel like you have the agency to speak to any person of a marginalized, race or gender, any minority, in this way of like, I'm cool. I mean, even like talking to you, it's like, I feel comfortable with you as my friend. I feel like we're on the same page. So it's like, I think I can speak pretty honestly, but it'll happen sometimes when I'm talking to Andrew, where I'll make a comment while we're writing and he'll get kind of annoyed with me. Like, the problem is, you think you understand what we're doing here and what we're writing is this character, but you'll still say shit sometimes. And I'll have to take a step back and be like, I'm not, but then I'll be like, but you know what? I think I'm not, but I'm still the same as anyone else. Whereas it's like, you still have to learn things. And what's crazy to me, dude, is when you'll go back and like, I found like an email, I think the other day. Yeah, it was an email. Friends from high school. And I want to say specifically, because I'm embarrassed, but like the way we would talk to each other and the kind of insults that we would use. And thankfully, like, I didn't never use, like, I was never somebody who used the N word. I didn't use the homophobic slur with an F.
Sure.
But, you would still say things to your friends and you would speak to them in a way, because when you're 17 or you're 15, you sort of think it's funny.
Right.
And they think it's funny. And you read it and you're like, I'm embarrassed that this exists. Like, I'm embarrassed to have spoken this way.
Yeah.
And so if you were that way once and you've grown so much from there to here, in theory, you'll grow so much from here to the time you die. You are somewhere in that journey at all times, you know, and I find, I'm embarrassed to say on this show, this is episode like 30 or right around there. I mean, I've definitely had some people that are not white men on this show. I think a good number now, probably. I think my friend Jordan might've been he might be the only other black person that I've had on the show, which is embarrassing, honestly. And it's not even because, it's not for any preferential reason. It's not because the people I reach out to specifically, it's more just like, these are the people that I interact with, probably, that I know that I actually have a line to ask that people will want to hear from. And so I reach out to the people that I think have an interesting background. And it's like, I think about that and it makes me want to go out of my way. But the fact that that's even happened means exactly what I was just talking about a second ago happens to so many of us. I do like, I think about this stuff, but clearly not enough,
I think the big takeaway that people need to separate from, this is what I use to anchor, to try and use it as a metaphor and explain. I consider myself a feminist. I do everything that I can to try and help further the cause that women are just as equal to men and should be treated as such in society. I have a problem where I say the word bitch a lot, if I'm being 100% honest. And within certain groups, like within friends, like even with female friends, they have deemed it okay. But sometimes I'll meet a new friend and I'll do that, and then they'll be like, "What the fuck?" You know what I'm saying? And it's not that I, at my core, am a misogynist, but I did something misogynistic, and I think that's the thing that people forget.
Yeah,
that comes from the fact that we live in a misogynistic society. We need to look at it for what it is. The same thing is true about racism. It's not to say that everybody that says or does something in particular is, a card carrying Klansman with a fucking, pillowcase cut out and ready to go. But that doesn't mean that there are things that, just because of how society has painted Black people or Latino people or anything like that, you are buying into that, and it may not be an intention, it's just subconscious. So I think the biggest thing that people need to hear when someone calls you out on that, and it sounds like it's something that you do writing with Guy and hanging with Guy, is that you stop, you hear it, you look and see, and then just receive if that's really what the case is, like what the intention was, what they're saying is problematic, etc. And then you course correct based upon that. If you're not entirely sure, and you maybe think that the person that you're talking to is being a little oversensitive, then you talk to somebody else that might be of that. You still acknowledge their experience. You don't discredit what that person initially told you, but that can be a good rubric, and then that would kind of guide you in that path. I think the biggest thing that we don't do, and I think it was proven in 2020 more than anything, sometimes it did and sometimes it didn't. We are so afraid of shame that we're not willing to be empathetic. We are sacrificing empathy in order to not feel shame. And I think that becomes an issue. That's where you run into without getting super deep into it, that's where this whole thing with Gina Carano becomes a thing. You know what I mean? Is that, like, if she had I think that the way, I won't get super deep into it, I don't want to drive that conversation there, but I know that the big thing there was like people were asking her to do the pronouns thing. She just didn't do it. She could have very politely been like, you know what, I don't want to, thank you, no, that's fine. But then she
Yeah.
decided to go and openly mock, and then that went from
Yeah.
no thank you to now you're full-blown problematic. I think that that's the whole thing. If we can just openly acknowledge that people evolve, that situations evolve, but sometimes society doesn't keep up with it, I think we would stop seeing all this quick to cancel and everything else, because then people would start seeing issues and correcting them. Instead of thinking that they are contributing to the said racist society, they are just a part of a racist society. You know what I mean?
Dude, 100%. I mean, I mentioned my friend Jordan, and he plays Painkiller. He plays Painkiller on Black Lightning, and he came
Oh
on
shit!
the show.
Yeah. God, what's his last name?
Jordan Calloway. Jordan
Yes,
Calloway.
he's friends with
Yeah.
Jay too. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, he's great. Jordan's a fucking awesome dude, and he came on the show. It was a little while ago now. It was a few months ago, and it was probably right in May. Like we were literally. It was like protests were happening. I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah, I looked it up. George Floyd passed on the 25th of May. So
yeah,
we're in that area. Yeah.
So Jordan had come on one of the shows that I used to do at AfterBuzz, and he and I have stayed in touch. He's a big comic book fan. I think if he's friends with Jay.
Yeah.
And he and I talked, and the conversation was really interesting because we talked about all kinds of stuff. We talked about this stuff a lot, and it was really. I had to watch it and listen back to it a couple times to be so careful, because it's like the thing you just mentioned about cancel culture is it's a very real thing. And if you want to be somebody who engages in those conversations, if you're willing to do it, you're interested in asking those questions, you just have to be so careful, because the reality is you want everybody to not feel to be empathetic. You want everybody to not live with shame. But you also realize that if you say the wrong thing, and it was interesting because he had some pretty contrary opinions to I think a lot of the popular opinions at the time, and he shared some really interesting stories. And I was sitting there thinking, like, if the wrong person sees this, or I don't edit it this way, like, which one of us is going to get in more trouble here? You know what I mean? And I was sitting there finding myself thinking, like, I was like, man, I don't want to be responsible for that. And I certainly don't want that to happen to me, because I know the conversation. I know how it actually went in real life. But I was just thinking about the way this is phrased, the way this is asked, the way that he says this, the way that I answer it. I was like, this is just a fucking conversation between two people. And I'm so hyper aware of it. So that stuff's a trip, and I think
it is 1,000%, man.
Yeah. It makes the conversations important to have, but they're tricky to have sometimes.
And I think that's the one thing that makes me sad is we've gotten to a place. I was using this metaphor back in 2016 when the first election even happened. We're all essentially an abused wild animal at this point. That's like covered in each and every one of us. It's covered in all sorts of bruises and scrapes and cuts. And someone comes along and they want to be like, "Oh, are you okay?" And you try and check on it, and then they immediately try and bite you. And the reason why is they're not only in pain, they've been attacked mercilessly for however long. We're all in a state now that we've been attacked from all different sorts of angles, some of us more than others, that we're not willing to stop and listen or anything else like that, or again, see anybody else's opinion on things and be empathetic of stuff. And so we don't a lot of times get stuff done. Now, there are certain things that I think that are non-negotiable. I don't think that any sort of for example, the kids in cages shit, any sort of like racism that we've openly seen like that, that's non-negotiable. That's not well, let's see it from this side. No, go fuck yourself on that. But like I was raised, my mom was Democratic, my dad was Republican. He switched over he had voted for Clinton, I think is what did it. But that was like a one-off for him to do for those two elections.
Yeah.
By the time he got to Bush, though, he was like, all right, I've gone full Democrat at this point, et cetera, et cetera. I've never had a problem with certain conservative ideals, but there's other liberal ideals on a social level that are more important to me. So like, for example, a woman's decision to do with her body as she pleases, again, her body, her choice in that regard, that to me is kind of a non-starter for me. And so that's the whole thing. I think that though, why can't someone, I hate that people become one topic issue like voters, unless it's something that is so abhorrent again, putting kids in cages.
Yeah.
But like, there's no reason that we might barely get another $600 to protect everybody from COVID.
Oh my God. I mean, and on the subject too of the thing you're just mentioning here, it's funny how this conversation beforehand, and we're going an hour now. Just before I was like, we're probably going to talk about Schmodown a lot, man. I don't know. We're really thinking about it. Like, let's talk about kids in cages. No, but like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
no, but like, I've got conservative friends who swear that they are fiscal conservatives that are closeted, repressed gay men who voted 100%, no question, for the Trump administration, and I'm just like, how could you openly vote for an administration that doesn't want you to legally be able to live the way you want to live? Like, how could you do it? How is money worth more than the idea that you could meet someone and publicly marry them, and that's accepted by the religion that is promoted by the president? What world are you living in? Like, how are we not on the same page about this? Because if like that is mind-boggling to me. I can't even, and I don't mean to make this political because I rarely, if ever, do, but that shit is just like, I don't understand people sometimes. I just don't understand.
I agree. I don't understand the black and brown people I've seen that got behind Trump the first or the second time. It doesn't make logical sense to me. The minute he wanted to call, Mexicans rapists, I was like, yep, nope, dead in the water. That's not that's a non-starter. Like, come the fuck on with that shit. Like, absolutely not. But people subscribe to it, and the fact that they still don't see why that's problematic, to me, again, that is a lack of empathy. That is 100% a lack of empathy. I get it. You don't want people in your pocket taking extra money from you. But the ironic thing about that is, if you look at his tax cuts, it helped you out that 1 year. It's set up that in 3 years from now, you're going to get taxed heavier than you were before the tax cuts. And that's the kind of stuff that people, a lot of time, I think that's the other thing that scares me. People don't take the time to educate themselves. They'll read a headline on Twitter, they'll see a clickbait on Facebook, they'll go word of mouth by something somebody said, but they won't take the time to actually go look stuff up, and then that becomes dangerous because now you're spouting off like the greatest hits of misinformation, and that in and of itself is
It's an epidemic in itself. Yeah. Well, so I have a friend who was on the show at one point. His name's Johnny Cruz, and he's an actor. Great dude, one of my oldest friends, and he's Johnny's a Hispanic guy, and he has been very clear with me that now at this point in his career, he is unwilling to take roles where he's like a gangbanger or he's like a chola stereotype. He won't do it. Yeah. He's on this Netflix show right now with Danny Trejo called like Seis Manos, I think it's called. Cool. It's an animated show. And he's like, there was a very specific character sort of within that show that I was willing to, but in general, I used to be more willing. I won't do that stuff anymore.
Right.
And I thought it was interesting because it's, he, in the time I've known him, in the 10 years I've known him, he's grown into that opinion where he's just like, I don't want to perpetuate that stuff. I don't really want to be a part of it, even if it is for the sake of a paycheck or a role, which is cool from an actor, just to sort of realize that that's where he's at. And so I was going to ask you something similar. Do you look at the roles you go out for? Do you look at that stuff and think about it like, I have a responsibility to stay away from certain types of work? Or is it not something that's sort of a cost of the industry, or so to speak? I'm not sure what I'm
asking. The answer to that is yes. I do actively go that. I think the one thing that helps me a little bit is the fact that I just, based off of like, I walk around in nerdy t-shirts and the way my hair and all that kind of stuff. I don't necessarily look like a lot of those said stereotypes, but that doesn't mean that there aren't stereotypes about what even a nerdy black guy looks like that I don't potentially push back if it's a little problematic. It's one of those things where I think I think we do have a responsibility to try and stop those stereotypes from perpetuating. But I also can understand if you need, like, this is going to be controversial in of itself. If someone decides that they need, like, if you've been living off of virtually nothing and this is your big break and you can be in The Wire and you got to play, Stringer Bell. And, if that's your big break and you use that to launch point yourself from that, and then you make a decision, I won't do this anymore after this, I have all the respect in the world. So I have respect for people that are like, I have to do this for right now.
Yeah.
but I also have respect for people that are like, I'm done doing that. I'm not doing that anymore. And I think the biggest thing I think that you have to do is, what are you going to do once you have that said power? Like, I give Chappelle a lot of respect. He did
Yeah,
make a lot of those jokes. And then by the time he realized, you know what, this is too harmful, I don't want to do this anymore, he bounced and left a lot of money on the table. But at that point, he'd already made money, so he felt good about walking away from it. And I think that is what we are. That's the thing that's so hard. Um, when people talk about like white privilege, I always like to bring up other forms of privilege to try and use it as an example. But one of the privileges that I would say, fortunately for you, that you don't have in media, um, no one is ever looking at you and going, Ben Bateman is the face of all white people. Like, you know what I'm saying? Whatever he does, that's what all white people do, and that is what I've gotten from that. Like, I look at Barack. Barack never showed any true anger on camera while he was president, or maybe in his entire political career.
yeah,
Because then he falls into the trap of, see, there it is. All black men get angry. Even the most proper and most spoken one, they got rage issues. You know what I'm saying? So that's even
yeah.
something that, like, I'm very meticulous about when I decide to let my anger out. Like, I was furious yesterday because I had a whole bunch of shitty things happen at once. And I was very careful to wait until I got home, and then I just let it all out. You know what I mean? And so it's rough. It's very tricky to try and just be yourself, but then you also feel like you have the entirety of a race on your shoulders, especially if you're in an industry that they're looking to you. So athletes and politicians and entertainers, because you're in the people's eyes a lot. It's very, very tricky.
Very much so, man. I mean, I've been doing on-camera work consistently every week, hours of it weekly for over 5 years now, without really a single break. And I don't ever. There are some things I never speak about. I mean, the last year is probably the most conversation I've had about meaningful, actual world issues in my whole career. I've been so hyper careful about that I don't ever get angry on air. I never instruct people or embarrass people. I never make somebody look bad on air. It's like, I'm hyper aware of it because I think that I'm always afraid of it going the wrong direction or a clip coming out. I just, you know what I mean? Maybe it makes me sort of paranoid, but it's about any number of things. But I wanted to touch on something a little bit lighter here before we wrap up.
Sure.
You were talking about it being a nerd. I know we're both nerds, like big fucking nerds. Huge.
Oh yeah.
And
Got
so
in the background with my Funko Pop. So
yeah. So comic books. You're a big comic book guy. So I'm going to give you some what's the rapid fire here? So Marvel or DC?
Oh Lord, Marvel.
Okay. What's your favorite comic book you've ever read? Could be an arc, a storyline, whatever. Could be a graphic novel, but what's your favorite one?
Probably The Dark Knight Returns.
Okay, yeah, solid, super solid. Where does Batman Year One rank for you next to it?
I mean, probably my fourth favorite. Year One is incredible, but Hush is insanely good, and Court of Owls took me to a whole new place. I didn't even know Batman could go. So
those are all. I mean, yeah, Owls is the only one that's more recent. I mean, it's not even recent; it's like 10 years old now. But like, that's a great story. That's the Dan Snyder stuff, isn't it? That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really good. You have a favorite hero all time? Sounds like it's Batman. Maybe is it Batman?
Batman has been up there. The rest of them kind of rotate in the top five, but Batman has always been at least one or two for forever. So yeah, Batman. I think part of that is the same thing. I'm an observer. I'm a strategist. Like, I like to use my mind to solve problems instead of physical strength. And so to see some dude that is not in any of these people, like amongst gods, be able to beat them, like that is it, by using his head. Oh, it's brilliant. I fucking love it.
It's the best. Yeah, Bruce Wayne, the man. Okay. Favorite MCU movie? What's the best one? There's only one right answer.
Oh yeah. For me, it has to be Black Panther. If I'm being honest.
Yeah, that's a totally fair answer. I should take it back. There's not only one right answer.
Also, the only one with an Oscar. So yes, there is only one right answer.
Black Panther.
If you want a top three, then I'll say Black Panther, Winter Soldier, and Probably Infinity War over Endgame, though I do love that Endgame final battle.
Yeah, Infinity War is my number one, but pretty much not even close. I think I did a rewatch of them kind of recently, and I was surprised at how I was shocked when I rewatched Black Panther. There were two halves of the movie. There was the half of it that I watched on rewatch where I was like, I had forgotten that this is a Disney movie, and as he's dying, he's making comments about slaves jumping in the ocean. I was like, this is a crazy, crazy achievement that this is actually what this movie is. Because if you're like a 6-year-old and you're watching this, like this is groundbreaking stuff, which is ultimately why it won an Oscar and ultimately why it was the first one to get nominated. Like,
it should have won Best Picture, man. But you know what was in the pool that year? There was a lot of stuff.
that's 2008, 18. That's when I started.
So Endgame came out 2019. Black Panther came out 2018. So it would have been the 2019 Oscars.
Yeah, so 2018, the Best Picture winner in 2018 was Green Book.
What?
Green Book gets the win. Green Book gets the win that year. The other big movies that year, the 2018 year, were Roma, is another one of the Best Picture nominees that year. The other ones that year were like, I think Can You Ever Forgive Me was in that Oscar pool. I want to say that like the other big ones that year would have been like, because the winners were Mahershala got it for supporting in 2018. Supporting actress in 2018, I think, was Regina King for If Beale Street Could Talk.
Yes,
which is perhaps my favorite single recent piece of movie score ever. Actually, Interstellar is like my favorite ever, but the song. That entire score, the Nicholas score, is so
I got it. Man. This was a heavy hitting year. Bohemian Rhapsody,
yeah.
favorite, which I couldn't stand that movie. I thought that I loved their acting. I thought it was too long and was a little masturbatory. But Bohemian Rhapsody, the favorite. Black Panther, Black Klansman, also phenomenal.
Yes, also phenomenal.
Vice, fucking loved Vice personally. I know not everybody did.
Good,
Star is Born, and then Roma. So like that was the Best Picture class. And honestly, with the exception of the favorite, I would have been fine if any of the other films had won over Green Book. I was pulling for Black Panther, but like I was not a fan of Green Book, man.
I mean, I like Green Book. I just don't think Green Book is a Best Picture movie. I totally enjoyed it. I understand, but but I mean, so when I rewatched it, I was just sort of like struck by all the good, but I was also struck by like a lot of the CGI in Wakanda is kind of bad. Like
the last, you're talking about the last fight scene
when they're jumping around. It's kind of bad, and like there's other stuff in the movie where there's just parts of that movie where it kind of like loses me a little bit. I would say small amounts. It doesn't have. For some reason, it doesn't have the story itself doesn't have as much weight for me. It was awesome. I mean, I think it's for sure a top 10, top 8, top 6, even maybe. But there's something about the little kid in me, because I grew up as a big nerd. I mean, all the comic books. I have 6,000 comics in my mom's basement. Wow. And like, yeah, I collected. I mean, I've got every Iron Man all the way back to Tales of Suspense 39. I've got them all. Dude. Yeah, I collected them all. So like that was my whole life as a kid. Iron Man was my favorite hero. So when for me, Infinity War, even though Endgame has the big, just jizz everywhere scene at the end, which is crazy. It's an incredible scene. But I actually prefer the stuff in Infinity War to that, because Infinity War feels like reading a comic book in a way. Like it feels like the big scene at the end, especially, and this is, I think, my favorite moment in the whole movie, when Cap is holding open Thanos' gauntlet for just a second. And Thanos is looking at him, and he's got the other hand up, and he kind of gives him that look like, how is this human holding open my Infinity Gauntlet? Like, there's just something about the epic quality of all those moments, that huge battle, Thor landing. It's so exciting. That movie gets me from beginning to end, and it gets me just as a pure, like, it doesn't mean nearly as much as Black Panther, but as a pure just experience, a superhero movie experience, it's the best one. It's my favorite.
I mean, I'll give you that. I think for me, and obviously that's the whole thing. Movies all mean something different for us. To have the conversation of Killmonger versus T'Challa, of what is the proper responsibility? Are we our brother's keeper? What does that mean to try and help other people that look like us? Like, is that something that we're supposed to do? What the what the African American experience was versus the African experience, like that, it rang true on so many different levels for me that's why it will always trump all the rest of these films, no matter how good they are, because you're giving me the same product as far as what you see in the Winter Soldier, but you've hit me on a personal chord. And I think that that's why Infinity War does that for you. Is that I love comics just as much. I'm right there with you. But if for you the biggest thing that it's bringing out is that experience that you felt when you read the Infinity Saga for the first time, and you're like, oh my god, like they have no shot in hell, but like they're giving it everything they got. That's what's ringing a personal chord. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's why I think a lot of people also really love Winter Soldier, and it ends up being number one for a large number of people. Other than it being a really good spy thriller movie, it is this idea of like, do you give blind loyalty to a country, to an organization, to a company, to your friends? Like that was what that movie was about, is who do you trust and what do you put your blind faith in? And it's a beautiful movie done that way. That's why it stays at my number 2, honestly.
Yeah, man, I love the MCU so much. It makes me so happy. Makes me so happy to have been alive and around in this time when we were able to see them and like so involved too in the space, so that like I could anticipate them and screen them early and review them and talk about them all the time. And I'll remember so intimately, like my buddy Matt was the second AD on both movies, on Infinity War and Endgame. Yeah, so he went away for a couple of years to go make these movies, and so I got to go to the crew screening of Infinity War, which was like 3 days before the release or whatever. And, and I was in there, and I just remember like the opening scene, and you hear Kenneth Branagh on the thing, and then you see Ebony Maw, and he's like, hey, his whole thing that he's doing.
Yeah.
And it hits you right off the bat, and it's so exciting. And I do remember specifically when Thanos breaks off the nanotech and stabs Tony with it.
Yeah.
I just remember silence. You could hear a pin drop. It was just, I just remember like, I can't even believe this is going to really happen right now. And oh man. And the writing too. I hope they remember you. God, it's so good.
To this day, it's about a 50-50 shot for upwards of a year. Infinity War, every time the dusting happens, tears.
Yeah.
Endgame, it's been a year now. So with Infinity War, it's about a 50-50 shot, depending on what mood I'm in. Endgame, it's been about a year now. I still get a little misty-eyed at Tony's death and at On Your Left.
Yeah, it's good.
That still hits me. But every single time,
Parker, ready to go?
Oh, that one gets me too. Too. But Killmonger's speech about bury me with my ancestors in the ocean. His conversation with Sterling K. Brown with his dad in the ancestral plane. And both of those, I always cry at those. No matter what. I actually won't. The only other movies that I cry at that universally, and this goes sad, I might sound a little bitch made for this, is when Hercules in the Disney's Hercules gets to Mount Olympus. His dad is like, you did it, son. You're a hero. Welcome home. I'm like, yo, he did it. Like, he made it. Like, his dad
he could go the distance, man. He could go the distance,
bro. It's Mulan, bro. The original, the 90s one.
Yeah.
Like, Dad, I brought the sword of our enemy. I brought the seal of the emperor. And he throws it aside. He goes, the greatest honor of all is having you for a daughter. I'm like, oh my God. Like,
that's good. That's a good one.
Like, those take me out every time.
You know what the scene in the one in Endgame that gets me, that makes me I'm always like, I wonder why this. It's when Tony's talking to his dad. It's when he's talking to John Slattery, and he has those couple lines when he's like, my dad, he did his best. He would drop the odd pearl. He's like what? And he says, no amount of money ever bought another second of time. That one gets me. And then the other one when he says, kid's not even here yet, and I already feel like there's nothing I wouldn't do for him. That shit, when he says that, both those two lines get me every time. There's something about it. The
so Love You 3000 shit got me.
Oh man,
that takes me out, man. So yeah, no, and I mean, I think that's that to me is why I was so vehemently like I had such a visceral response to Scorsese being like, they're not film, they're not cinema, and I'm like,
I know.
did you actually watch them, or are you just making assumptions because there's explosions? Like I don't. I love you, man. You're one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, but you wrong here, bro.
I mean, you form an opinion based on whatever it is that you want, and then you try to justify it with like, an offhanded thing. I was having an argument with my buddy the other day about the greatest action scene in an action movie of all time,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about all these examples, and he's like, maybe it's the Raiders of the Lost Ark scene when he shoots the guy with the whip, and I was like, what? I was like, the Raiders scene where he shoots the guy with the whip. I was like, that shit is boring. I mean, it's not even. It's a cool moment, but I was like, what about the shootout in Heat? And he's like, who's ever watched Heat? I was like, everybody's watched Heat. And then he's sitting there he's like watching it on his phone with the sound off. He's like, this is a dumb scene. This isn't even good. I was like, you're watching it on your phone with the sound off. Come on, what are you doing to me? Like,
yeah. And then I would have told you that the greatest action scene of all time is Rush Hour. That final.
Okay.
That whole like blow everybody up, push the goddamn button, and then like that whole sequence of hey man, wipe yourself off, you dead, and then like hanging from the top, Kara, and it's like, hey man, I'm gonna go get some help. What are you doing? Like and the whole like trying like that blows my mind every fucking time I watch it, and it's simple, but I fucking love it, man.
I haven't seen it in a minute, man. It's been a couple years on Rush Hour. In fact, I never even saw Rush Hour 3. Never saw the third one.
Don't worry about it. You don't need to. Also the Ninja Turtle scene where they find Raph just his ass whooped. So what Chance lost the IG match to, the only thing safer in the forest would be the trees. Do you know what I'm talking about?
That was the line. Yeah, that was the line, right?
So
exactly.
the sequence of events, Raph goes off by himself because he's pissed off because they're not looking for Splinter. He ends up fighting a bunch of Foot Clan on the roof. They beat the shit out. He's holding his own for a while, but there's too many. They beat the shit out of him, throw him through a window, which happens to be April's apartment. And Leo, Don, and Mikey are there, and then they start fighting the Foot. So from Raph getting into that fight through to where April's apartment burns down and they have to run away is some of the greatest action sequences and also some of the funniest for kids. But like some of the greatest martial arts action sequences I've seen, and it's just so great, man. I fucking love it.
I haven't seen a Ninja Turtles movie since I was a child, even though I loved them. And I lost to Roka in 2018. I lost to Roka in a 1v1 because I couldn't remember what kind of store they're situated over. I think I said pizza parlor. Yeah, I said pizza parlor.
Oh no.
Yeah, I lost to Roka on that one. So that one's been with me for years now. I've still never beaten John 1-on-1, but maybe we'll get a chance this year. So
do it.
Yeah, I can't wait. I have all these plans. I'm telling you, I've been putting together all my moments from my favorite 80s villains, just the biggest D-bags. I was even thinking about getting a gold briefcase, solid gold boss briefcase. That could be good.
I mean, I kind of like, or if you could go full Pulp Fiction if you're saying that that's the best Tarantino film, and get the briefcase, and every time you open it has a gold light inside so that nobody knows what's in it. That would be kind of fire.
I got John's soul in there. That's what you're getting at? Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Anyway, I've had you for almost an hour and a half now, man. Thank you so much for making the time to do this. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. You had fun. We talked about some real things in here, but as always, glad to talk to my friend Winston. So where can the folks find you every single week? You do like 4 or 5 shows every week now.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. You can find me at the Swaggy Blurred, TheSwaggyBlerd. That's on all the socials. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Letterboxd, Twitch, all that stuff. I'm on Game Time with Roka and Jay on Mondays. I'm on Blurs in the Hood Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Pacific with Jay. And then I do SEN twice a week, typically Tuesdays and Thursdays, but just check on Twitter. I'll always tweet out when I'm about to be on the show. See me on the Schmodown. And got some irons in the fire. So when those come up, again, if you're following me on Twitter, I always will throw that out there, including some sketches that I've been working with people on and stuff like that. So it should be a lot of fun.
Well, and you guys may see Bateman on Swag next year. You never know.
See
a lot of pieces moving around, a lot of things to work out. So maybe you'll see more of me and Winston together. But otherwise, my friend, you're a legend. Thank you. I will talk to you very soon. See you guys. And that about wraps us up here, guys. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of A Great Conversation. Wasn't Winston great? The guy is fantastic. If you guys don't mind hitting that thumbs up button on the video, leave a comment as soon as this video is over. Within 1 minute here when the video is over, just leave a comment below. Your thoughts, what you thought of the episode. It would mean a lot to me if you guys did. It really does help these videos perform a little better when you do that. And of course, if you hit subscribe, if you haven't already, it will grow the channel. Let's get to 3,000 subs. We're not that far away, right? Big thank you to all of the patrons here in the Nerd Network for making the episode happen. All of my Double Diamond patrons here in the Nerd Network. We've got Jack Mayer, we've got Jake Iacovetta, and we've got Jeremiah Mora supporting at that Double Diamond level. Guys, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to a great 2021. Let's close this one out strong. I appreciate all of the support you guys give here on Nerds and Suits. Have a good one.